Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Angela here. Now in this week's video, it's going to be all about my trip to Cuba. I'm going to give you some top tips, things that you guys should know if you're thinking about visiting Cuba. I flew in from Miami because there were no direct flights from Taipei. Please make sure you get your visa beforehand if you're worried about getting into Cuba. A way that you can do it is basically when you check in on the day to get to Cuba, you are able to buy the visa from your airline, but please check your airline. So if you're flying with Delta, you can only get your visa into Cuba from Delta at the check-in counter on the day. But if you're taking American Airlines, then make sure you buy your flights and get your Cuban visa from the same airline that you're taking. So Miami to Cuba, it was a very quick flight. Next is once you get off the flight, make sure you exchange your money. There is a money exchange right outside the airport. Now there are two currencies in Cuba, one for the tourists and one for the locals. Now for the tourists, we call it the cook, the peso convertible, and for the locals, we call it the moneda nacional or the peso cubano. You can exchange US dollars or Canadian dollars or euros. Now, if you're going to exchange US dollars, they will take an extra 10% from you. Now, as a tourist in Lonely Planet and many of the books, they say that tourists are only allowed to use the cook. However, once you get into city central, you are allowed to find locals or go to money exchange places and exchange it for the local currencies. Now, in a lot of the touristy areas, if they can tell that you're a tourist, they will not accept local money from you. But if you can pass off as a Cuban national, then yeah, you can use local currencies with them. Now, also, a lot of the times, sometimes they'll say it's 2 peso. So you have to double check with them. Is it 2 peso convertible or 2 peso cubano? In terms of roads, do bring a backpack. Don't bring a rolly-on luggage because their roads are not even, especially if you're in Trinidad. The streets are pretty much all cobblestone streets. Now, in terms of how to tip people here in Cuba, if you go to the bathroom, sometimes they will ask you for a tip for using their tissues. So 1 peso cubano is apparently enough. Or you can just sneak off and not give them a tip. It's not like they're gonna chase after you anyways. Now, if you want to snorkel, for example, and you want to rent the entire gear and the bike as well, it's worth 10 cook, so around 10 US dollars. Dinner, you can get it for a 7 cook for like a whole meal with meat, rice, vegetables, fruits, all that. But in terms of restaurants, it depends, because if you go to touristy areas, of course, it's going to be slightly more expensive. But if you go to the local places, it is so cheap and it's a different kind of experience. For example, there was a festival on the streets of Havana the weekend that I was there, and all the locals were out there celebrating, eating, having fun, and we got an entire chicken with rice at the bottom in a brown paper box for 28 peso, which is 28 moneda nacional, which is equivalent to 1 cook, which is just over 1 US dollar. Oh my gosh, right? Crazy. I know! They say pretty much you can't get internet in Cuba, which is untrue. You can get internet in Cuba, it's just quite expensive. Basically, local Cubans, they get paid 20 cook for a month. That's the average pay. And so internet just for 1 hour, it's 1 cook, which is equivalent to 1 US dollar. Now, you can find internet at some major parks. So you have to find which parks have these internet. Now you also have to watch out for the scams. You should download an app which prevents people from using your internet, because sometimes if you buy internet for 3 hours or 5 hours, you sign in and then suddenly it's all gone. It's probably because someone's stealing your internet. So watch out for that. Next, supermarkets. Oh my gosh, this supermarket is probably the most strangest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Basically, if you want to buy shampoo, soap, these are considered luxury items and they are behind the counter, meaning you cannot just go and grab it and go. You have to ask them to give it to you and pay first. Now, when you go to the supermarkets, you think of a lot of food, little snack packets and things like that. Nope. When you walk in, it's basically just rows and rows of big ass bottled container water or super big oil containers or just everything in large sizes. If you want to find small packeted cookies, it's expensive and it's very rare. They only have like 2 or 3 options for you to choose from. Next, classic cars in Cuba. They are so beautiful, but so many of them also don't have seatbelts. I just got into a taxi and it's not starting up. But this is like the tiniest taxi ever. And there is no seatbelt, so I hope I'm safe, fingers crossed. And Cubans like to fix their cars themselves, so they're pretty handy, the guys there. It's also quite common to share a ride with other people. It's called a collective taxi. Now, when you share rides from one place to another, obviously you will get a discounted price there. Casa Particulares. Alright, these are places that you must stay in if you're in Cuba. These are private homes of people and the price can vary. You should always bargain. Now, most of the time they will include breakfast in it. The breakfast is amazing. The lady of the house will prepare it for you in the morning and you just have to tell them what time. For example, they have bread, juice, guava, fruits, omelette, coffee, and maybe butter, because sometimes butter can be hard to come by when you are in the non-touristy places. Now, Casa Particulares, they have 2 colors. It's blue and red. Now, if you're a tourist, you need to stay at the Casa Particulares with the blue sign. And if you're a local, you only stay at Casa Particulares with that have the red sign. Now, the ladies there are very helpful. They will help you with organizing your transportations. If you have questions, you can ask them. But at some of the Casa Particulares that I stayed in, they did not speak a word of English. Therefore, you play a game of charades. And you just need to know your numbers. In Playa Laga, I stayed in a room with 2 double beds and it was 7 cook a night. While in Trinidad, I stayed in the Casa Particular for 15 cook a night, which is $15 a night. That's inclusive of breakfast. Sunsets in Cuba is amazing. It's very beautiful. The beaches are not the best beaches that I've seen, but the sunsets are beautiful. In terms of safety, I felt quite safe when I was in Cuba. Not many people would be catcalling, but a lot of the times I was with other friends and tourists too. And also you'll see a lady with a cat in Havana, and she's a very famous lady. You probably see her everywhere, but once you take a photo of her, then she will start asking you for a tip, like 1 cook. In Trinidad, you have to visit the Disco Cave, which is the cave clubbing. You have to go on the train ride, and you have to go to their famous Playa Ancon beach. In terms of music, I love the streets of Cuba. Yeah, people will be playing music. There's a lot of music, and especially at all the touristy spots. It's really nice. If you're also there, you should also learn how to salsa. That is also very fun. Now, I also recommend you visiting Viñales because that's where you will find all the tobacco fields, and it's quite a beautiful place. Now, in Havana, I recommend you going to the Fábrica de Arte Cubano. It's an art gallery, but there's also nightlife there. And it's quite a unique experience, and it's quite fun as well. Alright, so that's a wrap with my review of my trip to Cuba. So make sure you watch my previous videos and comment down below to let me know what other tips do you have when you're traveling to a new place. Have you been to Cuba? What are some of the tips that people should watch out for? Alright, make sure you hit the like button once and the dislike button twice. See you guys next week.